Our fear of nuclear arms drove us to bear them ourselves. We thought deterrence would be our defense. These weapons are costing us our future. A future we sold to ease the pain of the present.
Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker is so much more than it may appear. Considered one of the favourites in the series overall that director Hideo Kojima presented to the audience. On the surface level, it's presented in its highly addictive and intuitive gameplay mechanics based around base management and episodic contracts that expand into a co-op experience for family and friends to enjoy in some harmless digital fun. As well as those hardcore completionists seeking to upgrade and expand. Kojima expressed he wanted to go the extra mile for gamers, middle and high school kids in particular, in the making of Peace Walker to discover younger fans and build a multi-generational following that Metal Gear's narrative will continue beyond him. As the tropes of the series often point to, either through memes and genetics that had expanded into digital formats, that people inherit physically, that young people of the next generation will continue the story as they would a classic.
We've always kept records of our lives, through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
Kojima cites that the MGS series won't just fade out of existence, but rather into the hands of we, its inheritors.
I want to give them to you, so you can see what we left there.
MGS's pacifist stance and anti-nuclear weapons theme can be found all together in the series. In contrast, it seems Peace Walker doesn't give a dark or heavy experience as the mainline console titles did, but that's far from the truth.
The advent of Peace Walker will bring calm to this restless world. Don't you see, Snake? We need nukes, controlled nukes, to have peace.
Lies!
Peace Walker will restore order. Order in the form of a new Cold War.
To Kojima, he deliberately aimed to give Peace Walker a tone that resembled that of a shonen manga or a Japanese comic aimed at the audience, whilst using the game to ask, why do nuclear weapons exist? Peace Walker explores possible answers to deterrence, the complexities of maintaining peace, and frames peace by itself as a mix of ideals, contradictions, and ignorant hypocrisies that don't resemble peace at all.
I'm ordering a retaliation!
No, don't! It's the end of us all!
Who gives a damn? I'm not gonna sit here and die like a dog!
If the Russians are gonna kill my family, destroy my country, I'm taking them with me!
You see now, Chairman, deterrence is just a fool's dream!
It's treated as a paradox. The means of achieving peace are always subjective to each individual, a grey area. The tragic irony is that peace in Metal Gear becomes a catalyst for endless conflict. The series' overarching theme is anti-war, yet by itself becomes eternal, a business commodity driving the economy, just as it's a means to an end to bring about peace. That's the profound irony we're going to get into.
Will the times erase us? Or work with us? It's gonna be a lonely battle. No good or evil. No winners or losers.
In Peace Walker, the player is tasked over the course of time to build their base and forge new weapons, eventually expanding into something bigger. But in order to make this war machine operational, you must recruit soldiers with the Fulton recovery. Some soldiers, like weapons, get better over time, each in different units as well, to make the functionality of the base and items it offers for you in the field so much better. In typical MGS fashion, you're rewarded for non-lethal approaches, but Peace Walker makes it harder in certain missions to achieve. What seems like a typical sim building base mechanic raises the points I mentioned earlier of the nature of peace, that in fact, whilst we seem like the peacekeepers, we are actually a part of the problem. You can dispatch soldiers at any time to fight rival private forces, whether the nature of peaceful intentions is true. The game desensitizes the player and blurs the game's underlying message with its game mechanics. Thus, the player becomes a part of the paradox of fighting for peace, yet running a business that thrives on war.
Remember why we created MSF Snake. To provide military force to whoever needs it, wherever they are, regardless of nation or ideology. Our beliefs aren't all that lofty.
We just won't be the tools of any one country.
Exactly. We know only how to fight, but we refuse to live our lives at the whim of the state.
It's listening to the tapes you clearly understand the characters' motives that are guided by the world of political affairs, predominantly the Cold War. That if they are to survive, neither as a proxy for the US and Russia have to establish themselves as a nuclear power free from any nation's grip. In doing so, the player develops Metal Gear Zeke.
You know, Snake, you're right. As long as we're soldiers without borders, we're going to be a target. We need our own deterrent.
Yeah, we're going to be stepping into a lot of different conflicts as we roam the world, each one unique, and with its own set of geography, ideologies, and politics. If we're going to intervene in those kinds of situations, we need the threat of a Metal Gear.
Unless we want to end up like Che Guevara did in Bolivia.
Well said. Our army without borders doesn't have a land to call home. We're nomads, wanderers. What we need now is a sheepdog to guard our flock.
Right.
Maybe it's not the way the boss would have gone about it, but there are places in this world that need us, and soldiers that need MSF. And as long as we're needed, we'll keep on moving. Ours is a journey that never ends. We're the real Peace Walkers.
Peace Walker shows us that deterrence is a form of peace, one that ironically, whilst destructive, prevents others from aggression, whenever wielding such weapons or not.
Put simply, nuclear deterrence is the idea of using nukes to keep nukes in check. If one side launches nuclear weapons, the other is sure to launch theirs in retaliation, which makes launching an act of suicide. In the end, neither side can use its nukes. It's thanks to this doctrine that the world's two superpowers have avoided all-out confrontation. Nuclear deterrence has brought us peace. At the very least, it's prevented another world war from breaking out. But the theory of nuclear deterrence exists only on paper. In reality, there's no guarantee that either side would follow through with retaliation.
The paradox of the Cold War between competing nations is whilst further assembling the war machine. It pushed the world to form a temporary world peace in the First World, whilst Third World countries were fighting in their proxies, scrambling for these weapons.
You're right. Even with peace guaranteed by MAD, there's always the risk of an accident.
Nobody wants the world to end on account of some machines malfunctioning.
On the other hand, thanks to deterrence, we haven't had a world war since 1945. You gotta admit, it has been pretty peaceful.
Not that it matters to us.
People point at the nuclear arms and space races and call it a Cold War. I say if they're not shooting at each other, why not call it world peace?
Doesn't mean war is gone. Look at Korea. Look at Vietnam.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking in relative terms here. Besides, if war died out completely, we'd be SOL.
We're not warmongers.
And yet, we can't survive in a world that's at peace.
You got a point.
Hideo Kojima doesn't just place himself in the game, as seen in Peace Walker, then later into its successors physically. He acts as the invisible narrator through the characters in the series, speaking of the level of profound details of each entry's thematics that's impacted him. Born in 1963 Japan, Kojima grew up in the shadow of World War II's consequences, such as the US's presence in Japan, nuclear memory of Hiroshima, and the Cold War's anxieties that left strong impressions, a plausible route for the recurring anti-war, anti-nuclear themes we're so used to seeing. Kojima grew up around American influence in Japan and the wider Asia-Pacific balance of power that happened after the war, where Japan became predominantly westernized. Insistent that Peace Walker to Kojima is a major part in the series, Peace Walker also explains that non-militarized states, places in which the game is set, Costa Rica, depend on the very thing they're trying to avoid for peace. Peace Walker threads Japan and Costa Rica together through a blunt geopolitical irony. Both countries built modern identities around the idea of peace. Japan via its Article 9 and Costa Rica by abolishing its army, yet neither lives free of military politics.
The US has military forces stationed in Japan, right?
Right. Even though the Allied occupation ended, American forces are still stationed there under the US-Japan Security Treaty.
Unlike Costa Rica.
Part of it stems from the occupation, but Japan also occupies a key strategic position from America's perspective. It's next door to the Soviet Union and close to China and North Korea as well. It's integral to the security of Pacific Asia. For America, Japan represents a barrier against communism.
What about for Japan?
As you might expect, there's deep-rooted opposition to the alliance. In 1960 and 1970, when the treaty was up for revision, there were mass protest movements against it, especially in Okinawa. The US only gave it back to Japan 2 years ago, and American bases are still concentrated there. It's a heavy burden for the Okinawans to bear.
Then why don't they scrap the treaty?
Lots of reasons. There's the imbalance of power with the US, of course, and if Japan pulled out, they'd be losing the nuclear umbrella America provides. And as for whether the JSDF could defend the country after the Americans left, I really couldn't say. Costa Rica is in a similar situation. They depend on the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, the so-called Rio Pact.
So, the countries with peace constitutions end up having to rely on other countries' armies. Kind of ironic.
Their safety depends on forces they don't control, and that dependence is the core contradiction the game keeps trying to return to. Japan renounced war, but hosts foreign bases and leans on an American security umbrella. Costa Rica removed its military, but found itself sitting inside a Cold War arena, where outside powers test weapons and influence. Peace Walker uses those facts as a mirror, that peace can be an ethical stance and a fragile strategy at the same time. Kojima makes that contradiction personal through his characters. When Kaz talks about treaties and Article 9, and Big Boss points out the irony of a nation that promises peace yet must rely on someone else's guns to keep it.
Since it was founded, my country has not once been able to choose its own path. First Spain, then America. Over 100 years of this.
I know.
Ironically, like MSF, that sovereignty paired with dependence is the exact moral knot Kojima wants you to understand. In an article a few years back, Kojima speaks of these subjects, but he doesn't lecture the player. Instead, he lets the mechanics do the talking. You build Mother Base, expand your army, grow your power, and eventually the world starts to notice.
We've put ourselves on the radar of intelligence agencies and governments east and west. The whole world probably knows about us now.
Including that Cypher outfit.
You become the threat. Other nations start attacking you. That's when the game offers you a nuke as a deterrence, as protection, but at the same time as a reflection of the problem it brings. And suddenly you understand why countries build these weapons in the first place. It's the cycle made tangible, something only a game can make you feel instead of just hearing about it. Kojima pitched Peace Walker as a way to expand MGS without just making MGS4, but bigger. He originally called it MGS5, but overseas marketing pushed it back. They didn't think a handheld game should carry such weight, so he dropped the number. But Peace Walker still laid the groundwork for what would become Metal Gear Solid 5.
ピースウォーカーの時に4が終わってテクノロジー的にちょっと上に行かないといけないということがあってそれで FOX エンジンの開発を始めました。ただその、垂直方向だけじゃなくて横方向に広がりたかったのであえてプラットフォームを PSP に下げることでその上に上がる必要もないって上に上がる、コストを水平方向に広げることができたのでそれでピースウォーカーがちょっと今までとは違う広がりを見せたと思うんですけども今回はピースウォーカーの広がりと垂直方向を足すので、上にも横にも広がるゲームになっていると思います。
Introducing key characters and themes that define the series in full circle. And Kojima being Kojima, he played with that too. Not MGS5 but MGS-V. As the V for peace when you place your hands, He said before the Phantom Pain launched, V has come too. The Roman numeral, the phantom limb, the missing piece.
V has come too.
Peace Walker was where he planted those ideas, even if he couldn't fully realise them until he had better hardware and fewer limitations on the console. This time, the player is driven by revenge.
Things have changed, boss. We're pulling money, recruits, just to combat Cypher. Rubbing our noses in bloody battlefield dirt. All for revenge.
Rebuilding Mother Base from the ashes to continue the war without end. But unlike Peace Walker, your enemies aren't so easily defined. They're phantoms, Cypher, Skullface, forces you keep chasing. You're trapped fighting proxy wars with no clear target, just empty contracts with no real purpose. It's all intentional. Kojima isn't letting you save the world anymore. You're helping destroy it whilst believing you're the good guy. Pure denial, pure hypocrisy.
You've lost your minds! Don't you get it? You're seeing phantoms! You wanted something to cling to prove you deserve to be alive! You wanted to forget the death, your sins, so you'd cling on to dogs, or wolves, or even Big Boss. The boss is the same, isn't he? Every one of you is alone. That's why you suspect your own. Open your eyes! What you're doing is murder, plain and simple. All you ever create is war. War and violence can never lead to peace.
And here's the twist. Once you've eliminated Skullface, the enemy you've been chasing, the game doesn't end as it normally would. You start replaying the same missions, rehashed. You find new reasons to keep fighting. New justifications for your peacekeeping.
We will be stronger than ever for our peace.
But it's just the same pattern, endless warfare to build your base. Never satisfied, always needing a reason to fight, even when there isn't one to find.
Once the Cold War is over, our enemies won't be so clearly defined.
Commander Miller's gone a little cuckoo ever since that Skullface guy died.
All that Phantom Pain talk? I'd say all he's fighting is phantoms.
Well, revenge was his only reason for getting up in the morning. Then he got his revenge. And it didn't bring back anything he lost. Now he's left with this rage he doesn't know what to do with.
The repeated missions are that example. Until the truth becomes clear, staring back at you, the person you have become. You shaped Big Boss into the warmongerer he was always going to be. Kojima describes Venom Snake as an extension of the player, an alter ego. Unlike Peace Walker and the games before it, MGS5 gives you less control over who Big Boss is supposed to be. Those out-of-character moments, that changes that fell off, they were all deliberate. Perhaps even the voice acting change itself to Kiefer Sutherland. But the idea was you were never Big Boss. You were a proxy, gladly shaping his dark legacy.
I am you, and you are me. Carry that with you wherever you go. Thank you, my friend.
Taking the title, passing the torch to the next generation, aka your friends, and telling them about this game, in an endless cycle of revenge and war. Just as Metal Gear Solid 2 played with the idea when the audience wasn't happy that we wasn't playing as Snake. The beautiful irony works both in-game and outside it, breaking the fourth wall. You wanted to be Big Boss. Kojima let you, and in doing so, you became the villain in the MSX games. MGS5 further extended from deterrent into the endless cycle that created them to begin with, forward operating bases being the clear example. that players could be a part of this system to dismantle or make nuclear weapons at will.
Nuclear weapons development complete. Nuclear weapons disposal complete.
Of course, certain actions would affect a morality system all on how you play. Chapter 3, Peace, was planned but not fully realised in the final retail version. The disarmament cutscene might be its closest in-game remnant, as it was teased what was to be expected when we finished Chapter 2. It's believed the triggered cutscenes in the FOB may have been that hidden chapter where it ended. A cutscene shows Earth and nuclear symbols turn into peace across the nations, highlighting Kojima's anti-war stance once again. But if not, perhaps Chapter 3 was never clearly meant to be delivered. Instead it was cut content as we saw within the game, but its message speaks on more levels than people care to know, reinforcing Metal Gear Solid 5's message, including Peace Walkers, that true peace is a phantom. Peace Day never comes because the conditions for peace never truly exist.
Peace Day never came. Every morning I wake up expecting it to come, but it is always 3 days away. That cannot be it. I have not woken up at all. It is just a dream. It is all a dream. I am in it, and you are in it too. I am the dreamer, but you are having my dream. Do you get it now? You do, don't you? Peace Day never came. You can kill Skullface, murder Huey, slaughter Zero, burn the whole world down, and it still won't bring me back. So I know exactly how to finish. Say peace.
The Cold War system of deterrence by means of mutually assured destruction has brought an illusion of peace to first world countries. Meanwhile, wars between the superpowers are fought by proxies in developing countries. As depicted in Peace Walker, we see the KGB backing the Sandinistas revolutionaries against the CIA-backed Somoza regime in Nicaragua. Each character fights in the name of their own understanding of peace.
He who controls Central America will win this Cold War. First comes Nicaragua, toppling the pro-American Somoza regime. In preparation, we've begun instigating anti-Somoza sentiment and providing aid to the Sandinista National Liberation Front.
You're manipulating Sandinista into overthrowing Somoza for you.
After the revolution, Nicaragua will become a socialist state. You think America's just gonna let that happen? Certainly not. After all, the CIA is already here.
And that's the armed group inside Costa Rica.
Big Boss is an army without a country, hired to remove the CIA out of Costa Rica to restore peace in a nation that doesn't have an army of its own. Snake and Miller are tasked by spy and operative Vladimir Sadornov under the guise of Professor Galvez, the head of University for Peace, who had been teaching about peace at multiple universities. Of course, a complete cover story to who he really is. Zadornov isn't there for peace, but he's simply there to exploit Big Boss and pull him into Moscow and Cypher's orbit. You could say he tried to carve out a foothold for Soviet power in a region historically fenced off by Washington. Zadornov's name has its own irony that Kojima places. Vladimir is the ruler of peace in its modern interpretation, describes everything that he isn't.
I am Vladimir Zadornov. And Vladimir means ruler of peace. Now, do as you're told, boss.
Don't do it!
Within this lie of this so-called coexistence, partners with Coldman in what appears to be mutual cooperation, but this is the facade that both the KGB and the CIA are using to gather information out of each other.
Can you believe the CIA and KGB were actually in cahoots?
Never thought I'd see that at the station chief level. But I'd heard stories of operatives in the field being on friendly terms.
Seriously?
Most espionage takes place in political hotspots, as you'd expect. But there aren't that many of those kinds of places, especially in a small country. Hang around long enough, and you're bound to run into fellow spies, like it or not. You start saying hello, and soon enough you're eating dinner together.
Strange bedfellows, huh?
Zadornov eventually betrays Coldman by reprogramming Peace Walker to target Cuba. A US missile strike on a Soviet ally would ignite global anti-American sentiments, handing the Soviets victory in the Cold War without a single shot being fired by their own hand. Zadornov uses peace as a disguise. His plans could trigger World War III. Another contradiction in a game built on deception. Another person who believes their version of peace justifies the banner of peace, which is actually a V for victory.
Peace won't just come to us stuck. We are going to have to meet it halfway. V for victory.
V for victory. Rocket, peace.
Something created during the Second World War that if you held out long enough in that war, peace would eventually return. The same gesture had changed its meaning in anti-war movements during the Vietnam War, used to condemn the very machinery that claimed to protect them, one symbol with two opposite meanings. Peace Walker fixates on this dynamic. The game keeps poking at the irony of peace and how leaders used it to tell its nation that by gaining victory would promise them peace, weaponizing its very meaning. The Nobel Peace Prize is a V for victory, stamping out the competition.
Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing.
Be nice to other people.
But beat out the competition.
We see this extend throughout Peace Walker. Characters like Hot Coldman use the same expression with Peace Walker, on a single belief: victory is peace. In his eyes, hesitation is the enemy, the human instinct to stop and reconsider and altogether refuse to push the button. Human logic becomes replaced by a machine, that it can't do anything but retaliate. That's why Peace Walker lands with such twisted irony, that it's simply not a guardian of peace, it's a walking guarantee of annihilation.
Humans are incapable of destroying themselves.
But an AI wouldn't hesitate to push the button.
Precisely. Making it the one real deterrent.
People hesitate, lose their nerve. Isn't that why deterrence theory works in the first place?
No. Machines don't make mistakes. Only men do. That's why a fully automated, mechanized deterrent like Peace Walker is needed.
It's a warped system built on the idea of peace, even if it's there to be nothing more than a destructive tool. Coldman frames this as being stable, as purer logic than human judgment, but the moment you remove human restraint, you remove the only thing that's ever stopped nuclear war. Peace Walker calls back to this idea of how such weapons are better off in the place of human hands. Lieutenant Stanislav Petrov proves it. In September 26 of 1983, Soviet early warning systems detected incoming American missiles. Of course, this moment inspired the events of Peace Walker, albeit nations switched. A protocol demands immediate retaliation, and Petrov hesitates, as it's a false flag, and he doesn't launch. A machine would have hesitated, a machine would have ended the world within minutes. Coldman's logic collapses under that reality, that he thinks an emotionless system makes peace, but it only exposes how fragile peace becomes when you strip away human conscience. That somewhat brings around the twisted illusion of peace.
Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the commander of a Russian sub refused an order to launch a nuclear-armed torpedo at an American destroyer? In retrospect, that man was a hero. He saved the world from all-out nuclear war.
This also extends into the CIA military coup in Costa Rica, known as Peace Sentinel, and Kojima's indication that peace is often used as a cover to justify wrongdoings, an occupation as a disguise for their true motives. Hot Coldman and the Peace Sentinel set up in Costa Rica because the country had no army, making it the perfect place to hide illegal Cold War experiments, to push a doctrine that had nothing to do with peace.
I remember the Bay of Pigs invasion back in '61. The papers had a field day with it.
Operation Zapata. That was the CIA code name. The whole thing went south.
Then there was Che Guevara, being hunted down in Bolivia. I heard the CIA had a hand in that too.
There were several units similar to mine. MSP, SOG. They'd recruit former special forces, train them as intelligence agents, and send them on deniable covert paramilitary operations. One of those units trained the Bolivian army in counter-guerrilla tactics.
And then had them shoot El Che.
So the story goes.
Kaz and Paz share the same names. Kazuhira, meaning in Japanese, of peace and harmony. In Spanish and Portuguese, simply refers to Paz as peace.
This is my student. She came to me to study peace. Her name is Paz. Paz Ortega.
Paz. Peace.
No kidding. That's my name too. Kazuhira. It's Japanese for peace.
Once again, Kojima's wordplay comes into effect. Both Kaz and Paz represent the illusion of peace, that their true identities contradict the peaceful facade that they often play. Paz is introduced as a student, or rather an angel of peace, with conflicting emotions, with a part of herself yearning for peace. Her manifestos are like a testament to her true feelings towards MSF and her time spent with them. People like herself who are trying to find peace but never truly do.
These fans can get so rowdy that it is commonly believed El Salvador and Honduras went to war in 1969 over scuffles in a soccer match. In reality, tensions between the two countries were already high. The match was merely one of the sparks that set them off. But these people are so passionate about this sport that the story seems plausible. Predictably, many of the soldiers here are fans. They have apparently divided themselves into Costa Rican and Nicaraguan teams and started playing each other. To play, you need a ball and 2 goals. The R&D team built and set up simple goals on the deck.
They take part in several activities, including football. The event that people most associate with the Day of Peace is the Christmas Truce of 1914 in World War I, where British and German soldiers spontaneously stopped the fighting, stepping into no man's land and singing carols and sharing cigarettes and playing football. It was a moment where ordinary men just decided on their own that war didn't make any sense. Of course, both nations' leaders hated this because it proves something profound, that love and peace can indeed bloom on the battlefield, just as easily as it sparks hatred and revenge.
Do you think love can bloom, even on a battlefield?
Yeah, I do. I think at any time, any place, people can fall in love with each other. But if you love someone, you have to be able to protect them.
I think so too.
I have a favor to ask.
Uh-oh.
Don't worry, it'll be easy.
I told you before I don't want to hurt anyone.
I don't want you to either.
Paz plays as her role as an agent for Cypher, who orchestrates the takeover in Costa Rica involving Hot Coldman's unmanned AI weapons. Essentially, Zero uses Snake and MSF for his own goals to gather data on the AI weapons, and Peace Walker to identify potential uses of this technology that the Patriots use later in the future that turns the entire world into a war zone rather than a unified state of peace that Zero originally intended. You could call it a misinterpretation of the boss's will. The result is Hot Coldman's logic of AI combined with Big Boss's war as a business in the later series, destroying any meaning of peace.
You are a lousy liar. Admit it. This thing is a monstrosity, a product of your own fear. But not Cypher. Cypher thought of something different. Cypher's going to control guns.
Control guns?
That is right. Not deter, control. It is the ultimate approach to the illusion of peace.
As a spy, Paz plays out an artificial relationship to keep tabs on Big Boss, playing the weary-eyed student. Unbeknownst to Snake and Miller, their angel of peace is a fabrication, one that's there to make MSF submit to Cypher's will as it is to serve as a deterrent. Paz would try to frame MSF using Zeke to fire a nuke into the US mainland but would ultimately fail, showing her intentions are anything but peace. She becomes as corrupted and as evil as everybody else, almost driving the world into a nuclear holocaust. Her death ironically becomes a message to others that ours is a society that murders the so-called innocent in the name of peace. The symbolic nature of the peace emblem, or the bomb placed in Paz, becomes that visual message. Just as when you realise that the peace logo Kojima made for Peace Walker is actually a bomber, peace becomes expendable in war and serves different meanings to those who try to achieve it.
You like the peace sign, huh?
See, as a gesture, it connects every peace-loving person. Here, you try it, Snake. Peace.
No thanks, it doesn't suit me.
Too bad for you.
You know, the V in the peace sign comes from the V in victory. When did it start standing for peace?
I am not completely sure, but I guess it came out of the protest movement against the Vietnam War. Oh, and do not turn your hand around when you do it, especially around British people. It is insulting.
Kaz does the opposite in preventing disaster, but also wields the means to make it happen, with Metal Gear Zeke, and the idea that's fashioned as war as a business becomes an idea that he ultimately suggested to the boss at the end. They are commodities sold to the highest bidder, that it's no longer about nations or ideologies since they've left their countries behind. For them, there is no side, no rights or wrong. Their trade depends on things that never bring around true peace. Kaz gladly sinks into the depths of hell, that in outer heaven men become demons, the price they pay for selling their souls.
The way I see it, we make MSF into something along the lines of a new kind of business. A contractor providing the full range of military services, not just combat, but logistics, training, weapons, outfitting, and R&D. Combining the small footprint and exceptional performance of special forces with the raw military might of a full regular army. Only with that kind of power can we break free of nation-states.
The Phantom Pain shows us how Kaz descends into madness and paranoia, accusing everyone around him without seeing what he's become, taking on the worst kind of contracts to fund his war machine. It's fitting that he becomes blinded by his revenge in the game, because you can see it reflected into his eyes, cloudy like his judgment. He can no longer see what it truly means to achieve peace, even if he plays a part in peacekeeping and keeping the harmony of the world intact. The same applies to Big Boss, especially in his later years, who becomes the very thing he hated and now creates proxies himself in order to achieve satisfaction for the insatiable appetite he has for war. Peace Walker was intended by Kojima to tell his audience truly what marked Big Boss's downfall. For so long, Big Boss never accepted his codename, despising what it meant, until later he embraces it, ironically just as Venom Snake does as his Phantom.
From now on, call me Big Boss.
From here on out, you're Big Boss.
Unlike other characters, Big Boss doesn't care for the idea of peace, knowing its meaning is far more complex than a simple handshake, that it doesn't matter in his world, and the attempts to achieve it is more than futile in the end. But his efforts show his need to bring around peace in selfless ways that put his life at risk for the masses, at least earlier in the series.
I also learned that peace is an unnatural state for human society, and that war is a constant threat to our relationships with others.
That's right.
So, to achieve peace, we have to create it ourselves. Crying about it won't bring it about or make it last. Each one of us must go and seek it out.
You won't find it without making sacrifices. No offense, but I don't know what peace is. Never felt what it's like. Never even been interested in it.
Snake?
Oh, sorry. Listen, Paz, I think your ideas are admirable, and I hope they turn out to be right.
Yeah, me too.
Peace is in your name. Who better to help bring it back?
The boss's will being that shining example of bringing the world together rather than destroying it. The ironic paradox Big Boss becomes trapped inside, caught between his emotions and his clear misinterpretation of what the boss truly wanted. Big Boss lets go of holding on to the boss and accepts his title, and hereby then embracing the future of endless battle and betraying his true self that is buried inside. Big Boss becomes a walking contradiction and hypocrite later in my timeline. But Peace Walker shows, unlike the rest, he isn't hiding behind the illusion of peace, but instead sees through the true nature that's behind it that ultimately doesn't suit his world. The once hero of the world becomes everything he fought against to bring around a temporary peace.
Kill me. Kill me now. There's only room for one boss. And one snake.
Amanda and her band of revolutionaries, however, are a product of their circumstances of those who disturbed their peace and therefore have to fight in order to claim it back. History has shown that revolutionaries sometimes have to use violence in order to achieve it. Same goes for in several wars of nations in self-defense.
A revolution to bring peace to your country, huh? No matter how much we fight, peace never gets any closer, does it?
I do not like it, but it is the only way. If we do not fight back, they'll just keep exploiting us. You want proof? Look at our country's history. Revolution is a means, and not an end. I know. When the revolution is victorious, I want my country to be at peace. But to bring peace, we have to first eliminate that traitorous scum.
It's an old saying. We make war that we may live in peace.
Who said it?
Aristotle.
You know your history.
I had a good teacher.
It has always been like this. People making the same mistakes over and over. And still, all we can do is fight.
I hear you. If you've got a goal, you've got to keep moving forward.
Hideo Kojima's inspiration for Peace Walker also comes from Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. The character is depicted as a former Nazi scientist absorbed into the American military machine, designing nuclear doctrine with cold detachment. His entire role is to show how rational minds can build irrational systems, machines that promise peace, through the threat of total destruction. In Kubrick's film, Dr. Strangelove represents the Cold War fantasy that nuclear decisions could be perfect if humans were removed from the equation. That mindset becomes Hot Coldman. Peace Walker is the machine Dr. Strangelove theorized and Coldman weaponized it. They all sit on the same philosophical chain, but Kojima elevates this beyond Kubrick's dark comedy about how easily humans destroy themselves, and he repurposes it into the female Dr. Strangelove, a character fascinated with AIs, dedicated to developing AI-driven machinery, a fan of science fictions like 2001: A Space Odyssey. More of Kojima, again, expressing himself through his characters.
The film offers amazing insights into AI, their growth, their utility, their faults, and their fear of death.
Well, you must have found it useful in your research then.
Must you always be so utilitarian? It doesn't matter whether or not it's useful. What matters is that it inspired me.
Then it was useful.
Never mind. The portrayal of Hal wasn't the only wonderful thing about the film. It was full of hints about the future of human evolution. Truly, a film for the ages.
Like Kubrick's design, she approaches things with machine-based logic, trying not to let emotion cloud her judgment, but she differs in one crucial way: her obsession with the boss. Strangelove feeds the boss's data, her will, her truth into the Peace Walker's AI. If the machine thinks like the boss, then maybe peace becomes achievable, even if it's ironically just a machine designed to launch nuclear missiles. coded under the boss's parameters, it could calculate the correct response is the idea, to ensure a peaceful solution through deterrence.
What do you make of Peace Walker's final act?
I recreated her thought patterns exactly. It was exactly what she would have done. The world's most empathetic mind weighed the past, the future, and the entire world, and decided not to retaliate. Merely knowing that is enough for me.
So, what you're saying is, we don't need deterrence to have peace?
I didn't say that. What's important is that we wish for peace. MSF needs a way to protect itself from the might of nations. Survival requires pragmatic thought and action. But you must still retain your ideals. If the gap between reality and those ideals ever leads you to lose them, I doubt MSF will survive.
Strangelove's entire motive is driven by the boss, the main component driving the entire series and everyone within it. And Peace Walker gives the answer so many were looking for, the boss's true intentions. In death, she drowns Peace Walker before it can even fire a nuclear warhead, restoring peace once again. The boss's message becomes clear that peace is simple. Everyone just needs to put down the stick, the gun. Don't be bound by ideologies of East and West that separate us. For those familiar with Kobe Abe's stick and the rope analogy, that's why I placed it in here. But the weapon we cling to and the thing we refuse to let go is the whole idea. And that's what gives Strangelove some kind of inner peace. The aftermath causes her to abandon her goal of implanting human-like thought patterns into machines and let the dead rest in peace, because machines can't replace the human essence.
Every man will be forced to recognize his neighbor. People will swallow their pain. They will link lost hands. The world will become one. This war is peace.
By the time you reached the Phantom Pain, you spent hundreds of hours at war. You built bases, recruited soldiers, and refined your arsenal. And the game still asks you to keep fighting, to build it all again. So you do in Revenge.
Our new mother base. I don't know how long it'll take, but I'll make it bigger. Better than before. God. What should I do? Boss? Tell me. Tell me like you used to.
New missions and new targets with different reasons, but at some point you start asking why your purpose never feels so easily defined like it did before in the series. It just feels like contracts that are empty, recycled, and that is the point. That's when Kojima's trick kicks in, but you're not fighting for peace really anymore, and perhaps we never was. You're fighting because stopping would mean admitting there was never a reason to start. War becomes routine. It starts to lose any noble cause. That's why MGS5 felt different to the others in the series. It becomes clear your enemy shares not just a common past, but the same goals to destroy Cypher, or rather Big Brother. War is Peace works because the enemy is the point. Skullface and Big Boss think they're fighting Cypher, but Cypher needs them fighting. It keeps the cycle going. Venom Snake is created to destroy XOF, but XOF was created by Cypher. Every enemy spawns the next. The war never ends because the system requires enemies to function. That's how war becomes peace, by making conflict permanent, predictable and easily controlled. A common enemy doesn't need to bring unity, it just guarantees endless battle. And Cypher in the entire ordeal never once get involved. Others fight in their proxies in which they have created in order to keep hidden in the shadows. Cypher, or rather the Patriots, become the problem, the reaction and the solution altogether.
The S3 is a system for controlling human will and consciousness. S3 is not you, a soldier trained in the image of Solid Snake. It is a method, a protocol that created a circumstance that made you what you are.
So you see, we're the S3, not you.
Orwell's 1984 comes into effect during MGS5 in many ways. The party, who acts as Cypher, keeps Oceania in a permanent state of war because war serves a purpose beyond winning. It consumes resources so people stay poor and dependent. It justifies surveillance and control, and it gives the population a common enemy, a reason to unify under the party's authority.
Skullface is gone, but Cypher still remains. Competition with rival PFs will only get more intense. For us to survive, we need to expand our organization and get strong enough that no one can threaten us. So our only option is to fight and grow, and fight and grow.
That's the same logic that runs through everybody. Zero pushes it by trying to control information and unify the world under one will, the Patriot's will, that would later extend into a soulless AI.
Electronic network will span the globe, and our enemies will blend right into it.
You may be right, but will people really settle for an enemy they can't see? Men want to feel righteous, need to see the evil in the enemy they fear. Without it, they'll turn their aggressions inward, find an enemy inside. You know this is true.
I see what you're saying. Just as those robbed of their parasites develop allergies and autoimmune diseases, a man robbed of his enemy develops self-destructive tendencies. And I know all the symptoms: ethnic conflict, religious strife, terrorism. And with asymmetrical conflict, deterrence is a joke. That's why we must depend on information control. People need an appropriate context for their lives.
The war economy itself becomes a culture, a way of life that people gladly accept without question. And it's not that war becomes peace in their minds, it's that peace can only exist through war. They've all reached the same conclusion from different angles, that true peace, the kind where everyone lays down their weapons, is impossible. Human nature won't allow it. So the only peace is one that can be achieved through enforced conflict, and maybe even the threat of destruction. And MGS4 shows us whilst war has changed, its foundations never will. It just evolves into renewed conflict with different means, that it continues to exist even if we can't see it. Zero's idea of peace was through information control. If everyone thinks the same way, speaks the same language, shares the same truth, his truth, then there's no conflict. But to get there, he has to wage war on independent thought itself, suppress languages, control narratives, destroy cultures, and war on ideas and information is his peace.
If we're to unite the world, literacy must be suppressed. To suppress the information immune system, to borrow your metaphor.
Immunity to information. But to ensure there's no allergic reaction, while the immune system fights off parasites and pathogens.
It's done, Exo. This world will become one. I have found the way. The world that the boss envisioned will finally become a reality. Race, tribal affiliations, national borders, even our faces will be irrelevant. The nature of communication itself will change, and it will make mankind whole again.
Big Boss's version of peace is through perpetual soldiers. Soldiers need war to have purpose, and Outer Heaven is exactly that. Ensuring conflict lives on, it's about giving soldiers a place where war is their home, their reason to exist. In his mind, that is peace for them, that war becomes the stable state. The moment it stops, soldiers become obsolete, so war must continue to give them peace of mind. With Skullface's peace is through revenge and balance. The world is dominated by one language and the biggest lingua franca of all, the growing culture that is English or Americanism or American power. So his peace is nuclear proliferation, to give everyone nukes, including smaller nations, to let everyone have the power to destroy each other. That mutually assured destruction on a global scale, that the Cold War proved it works. That nobody fires because everyone's afraid. That fear is the peace. War held in stasis. There's method in the madness, that peace that is never guaranteed, but could be secured if every nation in the world has a button to prevent invasions, thus eradicating imperial colonism. Their war is peace. Ironically, the contradiction becomes a solution. Orwell wrote in 1984 through Winston's reading of the Forbidden Manifesto in Chapter 3, and I quote, "The rulers of such a state are absolute, as the pharaohs or as the Caesars would not be. The war, therefore, if we judge it by the standards of previous wars, is merely an imposture. War, it will be seen, is now purely an internal affair. The war is waged by each ruling group against its own subjects, and the object of the war is not to make or prevent conquests of territory, but to keep the structure of society intact. The very word war, therefore, has become misleading. It would probably be accurate to say that by becoming continuous, war has ceased to exist. A peace that was truly permanent would be the same as permanent war." This is the inner meaning of the party's slogan, "War is peace." End quote. This aligns perfectly with MGS5's Chapter 3, the one Kojima never finished, the one that left the audience with no answers and only interpretations. Instead, he channeled it into the FOB multiplayer component. Players could assemble their bases in Orwellian ways, that we can build nukes or dismantle them, but you couldn't actually use them. That's the deterrence in action. It makes more sense to get rid of them, since the threat of using one is only as good as not having one at all. The FOB system itself offers no real progress. It's just an endless cycle, exactly like the series told us. There's no true winners or losers, just pointless arenas of competition driven by revenge. Someone infiltrates your base, so you infiltrate theirs. Then they retaliate, then you do. Over and over. And the irony as the player, you don't even notice the pattern. After all, it's just a game. Chapter 3 feels like it doesn't exist because I believe that's the message. You expected the next chapter titled Peace, but there was none to be found, and maybe that was the point. The nuclear disarmament cutscene was meant to trigger when all online players dismantled or disarmed their nukes. Global disarmament achieved together, but in practice it was triggered early. A player exploited a glitch and used modded saves to disarm nukes artificially. The scene activated even though the global condition hadn't genuinely been met. And maybe that's the brilliant point Kojima was making. We all want peace as a human race, but we don't truly understand what it means. The scene would have triggered eventually without hacking, but we've created this deterrence as easily as we could have abolished it, is the idea. But the complex nature of each individual's ideals gets in the way. Zero tried to make everyone's thoughts collective, to bring peace through unity, and instead it caused a reaction, an immune system response, like Skullface pointed out. You can't force people to believe in your idea of peace. Hot Coleman suggested we have to meet it halfway, one that's agreeable on every end, that doesn't lead to destruction, or to let the world be, as MGS4 explains to us at the end, that it's not about changing the world, that it's about doing our best within it to ensure the multifaceted illusion we call peace remains in balance, whether we play our part in averting disaster or become consumed by our demons and spread the disaster. The series explains that peace goes beyond its definition. Whilst there are people out there destroying peace, there are also out there who are maintaining it. And the means to obtain it isn't always through diplomacy or peace talks. Sometimes war is the only way. But even with that being said, if we look at the ending timeline, Kojima purposely places events that have happened in the real world where nations have actually strived for a better tomorrow in coming together for the name of peace. Metal Gear has always been more about than just video games. Kojima warned us about information control, endless war, nuclear deterrence, and the artificial intelligence era before they became everyday anxieties. And the question he kept asking, what is peace, with all of the above, and if any of these truly can determine what it is, and maybe the right path we need to go on to achieve it. It feels more relevant now than ever. We live in a world where war is an economy, where conflict is a background noise stemming from the Cold War, where peace is whatever justifies the next action. And Kojima wasn't the first to describe a clear future we were heading for, just to make that clear. History is the answer to our future, but it doesn't determine tomorrow's outcome if we let it. But if one thing's clear about Kojima's video games thereafter Metal Gear with Death Stranding, he's always trying to connect the world. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to give you a big thank you, and once again to all of my subscribers or anyone who considers, thank you again for all of your support. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until we meet again. Peace out.
That's what you wanted. So much that you gave up everything you had. But you couldn't achieve it. Isn't that right? And still, all you can do is sing. There's no peace to be found anywhere. And so, we can only keep on hoping. Hoping for the illusion we call peace.